Dear participants, welcome to the fourth session of Day 5 Room 1 presentations. In this session, we are hosting Assistant Professor Dr. AKANYETI from the Chamber of Electrical Engineers and the Cyprus International University, Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus. Professor Byram Usturk from Istanbul University, Turkey. And Professor James LAMOREAUX, Chairman of the Board of Pella Geoenvironmental, Tuscaloosa, Alabama, USA. Welcome, professors. As our first speaker, I would like to invite Assistant Professor Dr. AKANYETI to deliver her speech.
Thank you very much for your introduction. I'm here to give you this speech on behalf of the Chamber of Environmental Engineers, and actually we have prepared this work and the presentation together with Sedef Çakır, who is also an assistant professor in Cyprus International University, but at the same time he's in the management board of Chamber of Meteorological Engineers in North Cyprus. So with this presentation, we are aiming to give you a little bit of the overview of the environmental issues in North Cyprus, specifically focusing on three important issues. So first of all, I would like to give a brief introduction to why these three topics that I will be talking about shortly are important for Cyprus. First of all, we know that in Eastern Mediterranean and Middle Eastern countries, we are expecting a temperature increase because of the climate change from 1 to 3 degrees centigrade by 2050. And these are information given by the Cyprus Institute in 2021. We are also expecting extremely hot summer days exceeding 38 degrees centigrade. And as most of the people living in Cyprus will know, hot summer days for us mean cooling systems because we cannot even breathe without having air conditioning on because it gets too hot. So that means more energy consumption and more requirement for electricity. Rainfalls will be reduced by 10 to 15% by 2050, and this means increased demand for water, especially drinking and irrigation water sources. And this means that we need to have more seawater desalination plants and we need to enhance our water reuse efficiencies. So this is one of the topics that I would like to touch in this presentation. Another important aspect is that infectious diseases are expected to increase, and this means that more pressure on public health services. And another important topic is that hot summer months will mean that we will have more deteriorations in the air quality and high ozone levels, which contributes further to the climate change. So what we can do in North Cyprus about these things? One of the things that we can do is enhancing the water use efficiencies. So we can do many things, for example, reducing the water loss in distribution systems or increasing the number and capacity of desalination plants. But in this section, I would like to focus on increasing the population connected to the sewage and reuse and recovery of the domestic wastewaters. Another aspect that I would like to focus is the air quality, because we need to increase the air quality to be able to compensate the changes in the emissions to the air to have it under control. This is the second topic that I will give information on. And lastly, sustainable management of municipal solid waste is very important, not only to decrease the greenhouse gas emissions, to reduce the climate change, but also to enhance the recovery of the materials and contribute to the circular economy. So what is the situation in North Cyprus about the population connected to sewage? This is one of the data that actually, as environmental engineers, we try to reach information, but it's not always possible because we don't have any published data on this. And most of the time, the information is with the people. So you need to do personal communication with people to access some data. And this is quite difficult considering that we have 28 municipalities. Each municipality has its own territories and its own information. So after we managed to gather this information from different municipalities, we managed to come up with this figure where we present the percentages of population connected to sewage. And in comparison to mean European Union and mean OECD values, we see that in North Cyprus, we still have a lot of work to do to connect more people to the sewage, because overall we currently have 58%, and with İskele having the minimum percentage, that's 40%. In comparison to south of the island, we have only the data that we could access was from 2006, which was 35%, but we couldn't really do a comparison because this was a very old data. So yes, we connected the people to sewage. Then what is going to happen? We need to treat this water with wastewater treatment plants, and we need to treat it to a level that we can actually reuse or recovery, so that we can reduce the amount of water to be supplied. So we have different stakeholders in North Cyprus that are responsible for the wastewater treatment. But the important point here is that each municipality with a population equivalent of 2,000 must have a domestic wastewater treatment plant. What is the situation in North Cyprus? We have 23 municipalities that have population about 2,000, but unfortunately we have only 6 wastewater treatment plants. So here on the table, you can see these 6 wastewater treatment plants, their design populations, design capacities, and the current capacity used and the level of treatment that they are achieving. So the 3 major treatment plants are the first 3 Haspolat, Mausa, and Gazelle wastewater treatment plants, which are designed and constructed by the EU fundings. And these are the ones that are able to treat the water to a tertiary level, which is the most desired level of treatment. I will talk about each of them briefly. New Haspolat wastewater treatment plant actually is constructed by EU funds, but at the same time by the Sewerage Board Fund of Nicosia by 70%, because it is receiving its 70% wastewater from the south of Nicosia, from Greek Cypriot regions. In this plant, we have a membrane bioreactor system, which results in a very high effluent quality. And this effluent quality is unfortunately not being efficiently used, because there is no distribution systems available and there is no storage systems. So it has to be used efficiently by both Greek and Turkish Cypriots upon an agreement with new projects. Currently, the water is discharged into Kanladere River, and farmers are just extracting this water for irrigation, especially in Mesaria Plain, by using their own means. We have an energy generation in this plant. About 10 to 20% of the plant's energy demand is supplied by the biogas generated. Then we have Famagusta wastewater treatment plant. It was designed for 4,100 meter cube per day. Unfortunately, because of the changes in the master plan of the city, currently we have about 71% above the design capacity water coming to the plant. And this is causing problems time to time, but still it is managing most of the time to treat water up to the discharge standards, which makes it available for reuse, but it is not reused because there is no storage or no distribution systems. And then we have Gazelle wastewater treatment plant, which is operated slightly lower than the design capacity. But one of the good things about Gazelle wastewater treatment plant is that there is a reservoir which is collecting the effluent water of the plant with 100,000 ton capacity. And this water is directly being distributed to the irrigation lands, into the farming lands, which is about 2,000 acres. So it is directly being used without being mixed up with any surface waters and being reduced in terms of quality. And the Kyrenia wastewater treatment plant actually is not operating up to the standards because it is receiving at least 3 times more flow rate than the design flow rate, and very poor effluent characteristics are being discharged into the sea. And this is causing a serious public health concern, especially considering that the effluent points are very close to the bathing waters. And we have 2 other BAFRA and LAPTA wastewater treatment plants designed to treat small volumes of water coming from touristic regions. Okay, so based on the EU directives, it is enforced that the wastewater should be treated at least up to secondary level. So what is the situation in North Cyprus about this? So we see that we have 60% of the population receiving no treatment at all. Only 1% secondary, and 39% of the population is receiving tertiary treatment for the water. When we compare this with EU and the OECD countries, we see that we still have a long way to go because, as you see in EU, we have 48% tertiary, 14% secondary, and only 29 plus 9, 38% is the percentage not receiving secondary level treatment. And in OECD countries, this is even lower with 19% and 66% tertiary treatment. So if we will do some concluding remarks, we should say that we definitely need more investments to connect all the people to sewage. And once we connect all the people to sewage, we need to invest more on the wastewater treatment plants to be constructed and to enhance the capacity of the existing ones. And once we construct these plants, we need to make sure that we have the right policies and required infrastructures to enable the reuse and recovery of the treated water. Another topic, as I said, is the municipal solid waste management. The first and the only constructed landfill we have is in Güngör. This was constructed in 2012, again by the EU funds. But unfortunately, there are still 50 wild dumping sites because Güngör can receive only waste from some municipalities, but the rest of the municipalities are still taking their waste to these wild dumping sites. We have a very high municipal waste generation rates, up to 726 kilogram per person per day. But these values are, the high value is expected that the population estimations can be wrong in terms of the fact that it is excluding the students and tourists, and actually, as we know that tourism and education are the 2 important sectors, they should be considered while considering the generation rates. So we have recently published an integrated solid waste management plan, which is stating that there is requirement for feasibility studies for the selection of the best management technique. And for this, we need a comprehensive municipal solid waste characterization results. So the initial and the most comprehensive results we have here, one was conducted by the Cyprus International University and the other one was conducted by EU, show that the largest percentage of our municipal solid waste consists of biodegradable waste, up to 54%, and we have the second one as recyclable waste. So these figures indicate that we have a very high potential that we can recover our materials and we can recover resources from the municipal solid waste. So considering the sustainable waste management hierarchy, which was adopted by our regulations, urgently we need feasibility studies to select the most sustainable management methods. But for these feasibility studies, more detailed characterization of the municipal solid waste is required, considering the moisture content, calorific values, and regional assessments. And based on the initial studies, as I had provided, we have a high potential for resource and material recovery. And for this, we need to implement urgently the source segregation activities. The last topic that I would like to share with you is the air pollution control. This is another topic that we have difficulties accessing data and actually data analysis. So we currently have 9 ambient air monitoring stations operated under the control of the Air Emission Unit in Environmental Protection Department in North Cyprus. And according to the EU directives, sulfur dioxide, ozone, nitrogen dioxide, carbon monoxide, PM10 and PM2.5 and benzene concentrations are monitored. So we have daily measurements for PM10 and PM2.5 and hourly measurements for sulfur dioxide, ozone and nitrogen dioxide. The only source sampling device is only operated in Technologic power plant, but unfortunately, we don't have easy access to this data. So as you can see in the figure, which is presenting the PM10 data, and it lacks the Technologic data for 2012, we see that the highest concentrations were observed in the most populated city, Nicosia, in mainly winter season. And these values decrease in spring and summer in Nicosia because we have the low temperatures and wind speeds, which actually favors the accumulation of the pollutants. When we look at the sulfur dioxide results, we see that the limit values is 125 microgram per meter cube for sulfur dioxide, and we see that this has been exceeded only one day over the year in Technologic, and it is expected that this is because it is a power plant and the sulfur dioxide emissions are low on that day. The other important information we can observe here is that there is a change between 2012 and 2016, especially for Technologic data. And we know that till 2016, the power plants were using fuel with 3.5 sulfur content weight percentage, but this percentage has been reduced to 1%. And since then, we have observed that the sulfur dioxide emissions have been declined accordingly. When we look at the nitrogen dioxide results, we see that Nicosia is far above in terms of concentrations, but we see that the data has never exceeded the threshold limit, which is 200 microgram per meter cube. And the reason why we have higher nitrogen dioxide concentrations in Nicosia is due to the vehicular activities and emissions from the cars. Lastly, the ozone concentrations have been analyzed, and we have presented in the table the number of days that exceed the 8-hour mean ozone concentration threshold value, which is 120 microgram per meter cube. And we see that in Famagusta and Kyrenia, the concentrations never exceeded the limit, and the maximum number that it is allowed to exceed the limit is 25. So here, as you can see on the table, Alevkaya has very high has many times that have exceeded the limit, and this is way above the 25 times. Similarly, in Kalajic in 2012, we have observed this 36 times exceeding concentrations for the Kalajic region. So actually, it is pretty surprising because Alevkayasi is relatively an a rural area, and you expect that ozone is going to be produced as a result of the reaction between nitrogen dioxide and volatile organic compounds, and it's a photochemical reaction forming this ozone because of the nitrogen dioxide and other emissions. But at the same time, we know that the destruction of the ozone can also take place through mechanism, including nitrogen oxide and photochemical reaction. So we are thinking that in Alevkayasi we have these high concentrations because these destruction mechanisms are not there in Alevkayasi because the nitrogen oxide levels and photochemical reactions are not taking place there. Whereas in urban regions, these are taking place. So these are the general data and information we could gather and analyze to put forward a state of the air pollution in North Cyprus. But there are still many more things that can be done. For example, we have other sectors such as brick and asphalt industries where we definitely need source sampling and monitoring should be conducted. The only source sampling we have in North Cyprus is in Teknecik. As I said, we have no accessible data, but this also has to be done in Kalecik to have an idea about the emissions from these important sources. We have regulations which enforce the vehicle users to have carbon dioxide emission tests for their cars in periods of time, but these emissions should be randomly measured to have a general monitoring and enforcement. And lastly, emission inventories are definitely need to be conducted and compared to the south of the island and the other Mediterranean and Middle Eastern countries to have a complete and full picture about the situation in North Cyprus. Thank you very much for listening to me, and if there is any question, I can receive.
Thank you very much for your valuable research, Professor AKANYETI. And after Professor AKANYETI's valuable research, I would like to invite our next guest, Professor Byram Usturk from Istanbul University, Turkey. Hello, Professor.
Hello, good afternoon. Do you hear me?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, we can hear you.
Okay. So first of all, I apologize because my schedule was in the first day, and I think today is the last day but I was, one excuse is I was in Glasgow for COP26. So I will try to present my paper here. So do you hear? I'm sharing the screen now. Just okay. Just share this. Yes. Is that okay?
Not yet, Professor. Yes. Yes, we can see your screen, Professor. I would appreciate if you can make it full screen.
This is a full screen, I believe. No.
Is it full screen now? No?
No, madam, it's not full screen.
Just a second. Is it now or?
No, it is not, but instead of going full screen, you can skip to read view.
All right, I can try.
Yes, it's perfectly fine now, Professor.
All right, okay. So, well, my title is The Role of Turkey to Develop Western African Fisheries. And according to me, it's a success story in Mauritanian cases. The Mauritanian cases, because Mauritania has lots of fish, I will talk about later. What is the Turkish experience of fisheries science or fishing business? In the first picture, you can see fish farm in Turkey. In the left side is from the Aegean Sea, and the middle is in the Black Sea, and the right side is in the Mediterranean Sea. So we produce almost 300,000 ton fish yearly. Sea bream, sea bass, bluefin tuna, meager, etc. This is, I'm talking about the marine fisheries. So we have experience in fish farming experience, and we have experience also blue growth activities. That means not only fishing and fish aquaculture, but also processing and added value, something like canned fish as well, smoked and canned fish as well. So our aim was to bring our expertise to Africa. That was starting point of Turkey, how we can bring our expertise in Africa and which country we have to do this, because some countries has infrastructure, some of them not. Some of them slightly good infrastructure, or some of them very poor infrastructures. So our target was in Mauritania. Mauritania is one of the, as I said, rich country in terms of bioresources. So we have also, of course, experience also pursening experience in both seas, including Africa. Pursening was very little known in the Western Africa as well. So what we did, that was a first stage. We organized a workshop in Istanbul about African fisheries, and we invite some experts from various African countries, Gambia, Guinea, Mauritania, Morocco, and some others. And we discuss how we can proceed and what we have to do and what it should be our target. That was our starting point. So, and we decided to work in Mauritania. As you can see, Mauritania has long 200 nautical mile exclusive economic zone. And Mauritania has 600 fish species. Among them, 200 fish species are commercially exploited. And plus, Mauritania has a surplus productions, means due to currents, Canary currents, there is a considerable upwelling system and high primary production in the major Eastern Canary Current occurred. And this is important for fisheries, I mean, for fish catching, fish processing, and fish utilization as well. So there was infrastructure was okay, natural resources okay. What about the human resources? Human resource was weak, but it was possible to improve human resources by education and outreach. So that was the another issue. For as you can see there, first we start the monitoring of the illegal, unreported, unregulated fishing there, and we establish remote system to look at the fishermen and to look at the fisher, to watch the area, whether they can catch appropriate fish or not, or they do illegal fishing operation in that and their water as well. In the right side, that was another issue, that environmental parameters. If the waters or coastline were polluted with the physical equipment or physical materials such as ghost fish or other fishery, other nets, as you can see there, or by litter, marine litter, that's the important issue everywhere, but this is also important issue everywhere. So we also consider and look at the marine litter issue there. Then we went to the fishermen and fisheries cooperative and to look at what they caught, how they do it, and what is the segment of the fisheries. That is another aspect of the fisheries, because if you know the segment, small fisheries, large fisheries, all traditional fisheries, fishing nets, etc., so we can decide from where and which point we have to start for operation. The fish is important there, although the country has only 4 million people, habitant. It's important there for the food security, because agriculture is not very much appropriate for them because of the scarcity of the water, and it's not very well irrigation system in the land. So yes, fisheries should be done, but it should be sustainable way, and we have to consider of the food security of the local people there. That was another important issue, and we did some questionnaire with fishermen, local authorities, fish market, and cooperative, how they consider the fish as a food security, as a livelihood as well. So we also take care of the sanitation or hygiene, because in Western Africa, a hygiene issue is not very well organized within the country or by the local community as well. So also we give some courses to them, how they have to sanitate the fish, or what is the basic principle of the sanitation or hygiene, food hygiene and fish hygiene in Africa. That was also another work package of our work. So the fish is valuable, important, precious, but marketing channel was also different. The marketing of fish is very weak channel. They depend on some kind of monopolized people and companies, but in fact, to better marketing of fish, we have to open all the channels for food security, and people should reach to the fish as a food. If we can open all marketing channel in this country, that will be another success of the project, and we try to do this. We organize and manage new marketing standard there as well. So in terms of the Turkish investment in the Mauritania was $200,000 in the beginning, but after 60 personers and 10 travelers, the investment is increased as well. Investment of factories, fishing vessel, yearly staff recruitment, and Turkish staff, as you can see in the table too. It's a quite significant number. That was another issue of the work. So yeah, I said the sustainability. So how we can manage the sustainability of fisheries there, in which standard we have to choose. We have chosen European Union standard, because this is the only standard that we can choose, because Europeans also catch the fish there, and when they caught fish also they apply the same standard. And so we said we have to use the same standard and same sustainability standard as well there. So that is a value of the marketing, and that is a value of fisheries there in the Mauritania right now. So very briefly, Turkish fishermen and Turkish expertise and Turkish money or capital now in Mauritania. We have a considerable success, and we have also some success story, mostly for local fisheries, because we educate the local citizen about fishing industry, fisheries catching, canning, and fish processing as well. So that was the 50 years ago same standard of Turkey. In the 50s, the Turkey's standard of fishing standard also very low, and now we are so different, and we are updated ourselves, and we are very competitive standard now in Turkey with Europeans or other nations. So we brought our expertise to Africa, and we will. So this is one of the commitment, because the commitment is to provide the food security and exchange of information, exchange of knowledge, and to produce added value product, of course, important. So when they produce fish, they sell their fish to Europe, but also they sell the fish to Turkey as well, because we also need fish, not only fish oil and fish meal as well. So we have organized several courses there, and more than 200 young Mauritanians participate these courses and get the diploma as a basic fisheries trainers. So we are open other countries exchange of our informations or knowledge, and of course we have also some scientific investigation there. If you want to know what is the real investment and contributions to fisheries investment and economic contribution to the Islamic Republic of Mauritania by the Turkish fishing industry, it is a paper you can read. It's in English. You can look at it, and if you have any questions, you can ask, or you can send an email us. This is our journal, and so follow us. And thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to talk about the Eastern African fisheries and explaining to the audience what we did and what is our plan for the next coming years in Africa. Thank you very much, Chair.
Professor Byram Usturk has joined this session from Glasgow, United Kingdom. Thank you for showing the courtesy of joining the conference, Professor.
Thank you very much, and I wish you success. Bye.
Thank you very much. Okay, our next guest, I would like to announce Professor James LAMOREAUX, the chairman of the board of PELA Geoenvironmental, Tuscaloosa, Alabama, USA. Welcome, Professor.
Thank you. It's nice to be with you.
Thank you very much. The pleasure is ours, Professor.
I would much rather be there in person, but barring that, it's good to be with you virtually, and I send my regards to Professor Gökçekis and all my friends and colleagues there, and hope that one of these days soon we'll be able to get back together.
We hope so, Professor.
Would you like me to proceed now?
Yes, you can start by sharing your screen.
Okay. Let's see. Can you see that?
No, we cannot see, Professor. Your screen was blacked out.
Okay. Oh. Well, let me get somebody to check it just a second.
Okay, sure. Okay, Professor James LAMOREAUX is having some trouble sharing his presentation with us. Hopefully he will get some help from the IT department, and he will be with us shortly. And until he comes, shall we insert an introductory video?
Catching a bus, never nothing when it's real, yeah it does. I'm flying above, no bluffing, no worry, keep it coming, and I'll be saying something. Simply but you gotta go. Be a bit of rush, so let's go. Feel the rush, adrenaline running through us. I'm catching a bus, never nothing when it's real, yeah it does. I'm flying above, no bluffing, no worry, keep it coming, and I'll be saying something. Simply but you gotta go. Be a bit of rush, so let's go. Feel the rush, adrenaline running through us. I'm catching a bus, never nothing when it's real, yeah it does. I'm flying above, no bluffing, no worry, keep it coming, and I'll be saying something. Simply but you gotta go. Be a bit of rush, so let's go. Feel the rush, adrenaline running through us. I'm catching a bus, never nothing when it's real, yeah it does. I'm flying above, no bluffing, no worry, keep it coming, and I'll be saying something. Simply but you gotta go. Be a bit of rush, so let's go. Feel the rush, adrenaline running through us. I'm catching a bus, never nothing when it's real, yeah it does. I'm flying above, no bluffing, no worry, keep it coming, and I'll be saying something. Simply but you gotta go. Be a bit of rush, so let's go. Feel the rush, adrenaline running through us.
Okay, here you go.
I guess the problem with Professor LAMOREAUX' screen sharing is solved.
Hello.
Hello, welcome back, Professor.
Thank you.
Okay, Professor, may I kindly ask one last thing from you?
Yes.
If you can lower your webcam so that we can see you.
Okay. Is that better?
Thank you very much, Professor.
Now all we got to do is share it, right? Can you see that?
No, we cannot see, Professor.
It's
What is it, channel?
it's still not getting on there.
It won't let you share your presentation. Is that what you're trying to do?
Yeah. Mustafa?
Professor?
Yeah, I sent you a backup copy to your email address. Can you?
Yes, I have your presentation, Professor.
Okay.
I'll share my screen.
Okay, let's do that. Okay, good. All right. Well, as I said earlier, it's nice to be with everybody here, and I look forward to seeing you in person one of these days in the near future. If you would go ahead, Mustafa. Today, I'm going to be talking on groundwater science issues and research trends, and we'll begin to look by looking at sustainable water development, and then we'll look at some selected major journals and what sort of research and issues are being covered in those. And then we'll look at the some international associations and what their activities are. And then we'll look at the groundwater overview from the United Nations. So, next slide, please. And next one. Next one, please. Hydrogeology plays a major role in all aspects of environmental planning, execution, and implementation. And without a safe, sustainable water supply, life cannot exist, and hopes for prosperity are limited. Much of future world demands will be made up of the groundwater component. Next. The United Nations has identified water resources as a top priority, and attention is particularly drawn to freshwater stress, which relates water withdrawal to the percentage of water available. And based on current rate of usage, the United Nations is not optimistic about the global water outlook. Next. Here you can see the freshwater stress from 95 to 2025. There's a substantial difference, as you can tell, and so you can see why they are concerned. Next one. To address this issue, mankind needs to embrace sustainable water development, which is the development of water in a manner which an adequate supply of good quality water is sustained and the watercourse ecosystem is maintained for the uses of future generations. Next. Water quantity and water quality are, as we all know, inextricably linked, and therefore there needs to be rapid movement towards SWD in developed and developing countries. Next. There are 5 specific elements included in sustainable water development, and they're the right to use water, the protection of water resources and prevention of water degradation, the maintenance of water flow, an ecosystem-related approach, and the procedural elements to achieve sustainable development. Next. Next. Next. Yeah. Next. To move towards sustainable water development, freshwater should be managed in a holistic manner, or in other words, an ecosystem approach, such that management of water resources is holistic when it is done on a catchment or drainage basin basis. This includes both land and water resources, since land use can have significant impacts on freshwater and related ecosystems. Thus, water legislation should provide for a holistic ecosystem approach to the management of water. And in regards to land use, as more and more land is being built upon, and particularly in coastal areas, which are subject to tsunamis and climate change, this is even more critical to address. Next. As we said, the United Nations is very concerned about that sustainable development, and so forth, and as such, they've developed Sustainable Development Goal 6, which is access to water and sanitation. Clean, accessible water for all is an essential need of the world. There is sufficient fresh water on Earth to achieve this. Due to bad economics or poor infrastructure, millions of people, most of them children, die from diseases associated with inadequate water supply, sanitation, and hygiene. As you know, the United States has just passed legislation to significantly increase infrastructure projects, and many of the other developed countries are doing similar types of things. Water scarcity, poor water quality, and inadequate sanitation negatively impact food security, livelihood choices, and educational opportunities for poor families. Drought afflicts some of the world's poorest countries, worsening hunger and malnutrition, and continues to be a very critical problem. By 2050, 1 in 4 people is likely to live in a country affected by chronic or recurring shortages of fresh water. Next. To give you an idea of some of the research trends in selected prominent journals, we've selected several here that follow. Next. One of which is the title, or the name of it, Sustainable Water Resources Management. Next. The aims and scope of SWAM are that explores a broad range of topics in water resources management, covers geopolitical and socioeconomic effects and constraints. It includes such topics as natural and man-induced contamination of water resources, surface and groundwater interaction, managed aquifer recharge, which is a significant activity taking place around the world to recharge our water resources, and storage. Addresses water resources management, sustainability of water resources, ground and surface water quality and quantity, water use and reuse, surface and groundwater interaction, aquifer recharge, storage, and more. And one of the unique things about sustainable water resources management is the fact that it includes the geopolitical and the socioeconomic effects in addition to the technical aspects. So to that extent, the field is broadening and understanding that these topics must be covered as well, and people professionals from those fields must be included in the research being done. Next. Here's a chart. I don't know if hopefully you can see it. If not, I've sent this to Mustafa so he can make it available to people. But this is the top 10 full text article request for all publication years. And you can, I can't read it on my screen. Can you make it any bigger, Mustafa? Okay, and maybe, yeah, there you go. But here you can see some of the ones that are most read. Is water quality assessment of lake water, which is a review, and most journals offer reviews which give you a good overall picture of the particular topic. And as an overview to flood vulnerability assessment methods, and certainly flooding has taken place all over the world. We've seen it in the media on a recurring basis, and this based on tremendous rainfall that occurs in a short period of time. And there's the hydro in the bottom. It says hydropower to sustainable water and energy development in Ethiopia, and as we all know, the Egypt and Ethiopia are trying to work out an agreement now so they can have a hydropower dam there in Ethiopia and still share their water source. So these are all things that are of great concern. Next one. Another journal that is in another area is Carbonates and Evaporites. Next slide, please. The aims and scope of Carbonates and Evaporites look at provides a forum for exchange of ideas on all aspects of carbonate and evaporite geology. It includes the origin and stratigraphy of carbonate and evaporite rocks and issues unique to these rock types. They include karst weathering phenomena, engineering and environmental issues, mining and minerals extraction, and caves and permeability. And 25% of their surface is karst. So it's a very significant topic to study, and also much of the groundwater resources in the world come from karst cavities. So next slide. Here we see the top 10 full articles for all publications years. Can you make that a little bigger, please? There we go. First one is tectonic evolution and paleokarstification of carbonate rocks in the Paleozoic Tarim Basin. And further down, if you could go on down, please, Mustafa. Here's one related to Turkey on the depositional environment characteristics of ULUÇAM with the evaporites in central Anatolia, Turkey. So these are some of the topic areas. There's a special topical issue on karst waters of Europe. All of these show the research trends and what the interests are. Next one. All right. Next one. Next. All right. The third journal that we'll be looking at is Environmental Earth Sciences. And the next slide. The aims and scope include interaction between humans, natural resources, ecosystems, special climates, or unique geographic zones in the Earth. And major disciplines include hydrogeology, hydrochemistry, geochemistry, geophysics, engineering geology, remediation science, natural resources management, environmental climatology and biota, environmental geography, soil science, and geomicrobiology. So it covers quite a wide range. And here are some of the more details in regard to that you're welcome to look at later on. Next slide. Here we have the top 10 full text article request for all publications years. This is from 2009 to 2017. As examples, there's anthropogenic contamination of groundwater with nitrate in arid regions and in Algeria. And as we all know, nitrate's a very serious concern all over the world. There's impacts of climate change on stream flow and hydropower generation in the Alpine region. So there's a wide range of topics, and you can get an idea of the research that is being done in these areas. Next slide. All right. Next slide. Here we do wordles. And basically what it is the size of the word corresponds to their coverage in this particular one is environmental or sciences. And you can see what in the first slide here, you see that which water-related topics are most frequently cited. We've got water quality, risk, rock and gas. These are the leading topics. The next slide. Here, this is the one that says water, risk, rock and gas. And next slide. Here we have the words that were most utilized in 2020. Again, giving you an idea of the research trends and issues that are being addressed in these journals. Next slide. Here we have the 100 most cited papers from all years since 2009, and you can take a look at again by size which areas are the most covered topics. And here you've got CO2, landslides, mapping, GIS, soil, in addition to the ones that we've seen in those previous slides. Next. Next. Next. In addition to research journals like those that we've been discussing, there's also research trends by the various international societies. One of those that I'm most familiar with is the International Association of Hydrogeologists, and I know in my former talks there in CYPRUS, I've encouraged the younger people more specifically to take advantage of the networks that are available through these international associations, because you're able to touch base with and make friendships with scientists, engineers, water management, and other professionals in groundwater research, management, and protection. And IH has 4,000 members worldwide in 40 countries. And so you're able to network with people all over the world. And our company, P. LAMOREAUX Associates, Pila Geoenvironmental, many of our work overseas has come from contacts through IH. IH has 8 specialized research commissions. Next slide. These include commissions on groundwater and climate change, commission on groundwater and energy, commission on groundwater outreach, commission on karst hydrogeology, commission on managing aquifer recharge, one on mineral and thermal waters, regional groundwater flow, and transboundary aquifers. And I'm actually a member of the Karst Commission and the chairman of the Commission on Mineral and Thermal Water. So if any of you are interested in working in those areas, please let me know. Next slide, please. The United Nations is a significant water partner with these different organizations, and they're as we've discussed earlier, global groundwater resources are under increasing pressure due to human activities and climate change. And UNESCO and IRAC have developed a groundwater overview, which showcases the essential issues of groundwater, informs about groundwater related activities, enhances knowledge exchange and collaboration, and raises awareness about our most important hidden resource, groundwater. Next slide, please. Here's the photo of the cover of the document. And it's very interesting and certainly worth a read if you'd like to pursue it further. Next. They touch on several particular topic areas. Climate variability is the world's largest distributed store of fresh water, groundwater plays a central part in sustaining ecosystems and enabling human adaptation to climate variability and change. Aquifers have a buffering capacity, and they are naturally more resistant to external impact than surface waters. Since variabilities of surface water availability is increasing due to climate change, the strategic importance of aquifers for water and food scarcity is clearly growing. Next. We've all read recently about natural disasters and conflicts and human rights, and as such, aquifers can substitute affected drinking water supplies in times of catastrophic events, such as tsunamis, or in the southern United States, where I'm located, we have a number of hurricanes and tornadoes. In fact, we worked with a local hospital that was almost destroyed by a tornado. Fortunately, it missed it, but at the same time, it made them understand the need for a potable groundwater supply. And so we were able to help them with that. And we continue to work with them and other hospitals around the country. Relief organizations need to know about availability of groundwater for water supply when they're looking at settling displaced communities after such natural disasters and/or conflicts. And groundwater is often a possible solution for the people without access to safe drinking water, which is still more than 600 million. Next one, please. Governance law and transboundary issues is another area of concern. And as groundwater is a common pool resource and is often utilized at an individual level, regardless of overall impact on the aquifer, because neither use nor impact are necessarily immediately visible. This becomes even more complex when aquifers cross state or national boundaries or transboundary borders. Aquifers need to be governed through a process of shared responsibility and participation, information availability and transparency, and the rule of law. One of the projects that our company worked on was the Fije Spring in Damascus, Syria, which is the third largest spring in the world. And they were having problems with low flow in the summertime. And so in order to address that, we needed to look at the recharge boundaries for the spring, which included going into Lebanon in order to trace that recharge area. So the boundaries don't, particularly geological or hydrogeological boundaries, don't stop at the country boundary or a state boundary or whatever. So these things need to be taken into consideration. Next slide. In regards to groundwater and the environment, there are various kinds of ecosystems that depend on groundwater. There's aquatic ecosystem, which includes wetlands, rivers, and lakes receiving groundwater. The terrestrial ecosystem, which is phreatite vegetation, either shallow-rooted in alluvial settings or deep-rooted in arid zones. Subterranean limestone formations with karstic caverns, and we've already said that 25% of the earth is karst. According to groundwater is an essential part of any ecosystem-based adaptation measure, green infrastructure, or a nature-based solution. Next slide. In regards to groundwater and settlements, it's the main source of water supply in many cities around the world and is increasingly under pressure due to continuous urbanization, climate change, and inadequate water management. Groundwater depletion and land subsidence are serious problems. The pumping rates in the megacities may be reduced and compensated by urban rainwater harvesting, rural-urban water transfers, aquifer recharge with wastewater, and similar measures. In fact, Environmental Sciences has recently published a special issue in regard to large basin water problems around the world, like in Bangkok or Mexico City or Istanbul, etc. So to address these problems. Next slide. Sanitation, health, and pollution is a very significant problem, and water-related disease remains one of the major health concerns in the world. The improvement of groundwater quality control in conjunction with improvement in sanitation and personal hygiene is the main strategy to reduce water-related disease. Groundwater can be polluted from agriculture, sanitation, industry and mining, landfills, and waste disposal, traffic and transport, and also from chemical processes within geological environments. And particularly in Bangladesh, there's a problem with arsenic in the water supply, which occurs naturally. So this is another thing that would be looked at. Regular groundwater monitoring, vulnerability assessment, protection from point source and diffuse pollution, and pollutant removal are some of the necessary actions in preserving and improving groundwater quality and health. Next slide. Food and energy follows right along in the fact that about 2/3 of all abstracted groundwater is used in agriculture. Global food production increasingly relies on groundwater over abstraction. Groundwater depletion eventually leads to decline of food production, and about 1/4 of the energy used globally is spent on food production and supply, including groundwater pumping. Deep aquifers as a potential source and a sink for heat can play a much more prominent role in the provision of renewable geothermal energy. And not only for geothermal energy, but in Thailand and the northeast Karat Plateau, they're looking at deep aquifers as a source of drinking water, potable water. So, next slide. All these things tie into economics and the fact that groundwater resources are extensively used in production processes by large international companies all over the world. Accordingly, international investors are being encouraged to share broader societal and environmental costs of groundwater. Understanding the value of groundwater would be an additional incentive for investors and asset managers to participate, leading eventually to investment risk reduction. And we've actively participated in a number of projects where they actually put a value on groundwater, and not only groundwater, but other resources as well. So, next slide. So, to summarize research trends that we've touched on, or through the articles in the journals that may have addressed them over that we've looked at. Some of the research trends include remote sensing, which is increasingly used for aquifer management, satellite data interpretation for drought and long-term weather forecasting, bringing more real-time reporting data online via the web, cross-disciplinary training, regional, national, and international emphasis on improving water use agreements and best practices, and more collaborative studies among consortium universities or corporations, and looking at water as an economic commodity or as a natural right. And all of these things are ones that we can look at doing with Near East University. I've had a long time association there, and just the fact that we're on a virtual conference today shows the correlation and corroboration of working on different projects, and hopefully more in the future. So, next slide. I think that's it. Okay.
That was the last slide, Professor.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to be with everybody today, and it'll be interesting to see what results may come out of this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor James, and thank you very much for sharing the latest research trends in the fields of natural resources, energy, and environmental management. Okay, and thank you for being with us, Professor James. This was the last scientific presentation in the conference, and therefore I would like to announce that this is the end of this session, and we will be meeting you shortly in the closure session.
Catching a bus, never nothing when it's really done.